Ever wonder if Squadron 42 could transform the Star Citizen universe? Discover the groundbreaking potential of this awaited release. Welcome to our detailed exploration of Squadron 42's potential impact on the Star Citizen community. Today, JC and Havoc will delve into how this anticipated game could attract new players and possibly make its way to consoles, dramatically shifting the game dynamics. Tune in as they discuss the expected changes in community size and player demographics.
Havoc, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Just
Good.
another day.
Yep. How do you think Squadron 42 will impact the Star Citizen community?
I think Squadron 42 will impact it it will bring a lot of fresh new players that have never played Star Citizen at all. And I think that's going to be, if they deliver it the way that we think that they're going to deliver it, and it's going to be a pretty solid first person single player experience. It's going to be probably a better reception than Starfield ever was. And one of the things that I think that they might do and would bring more people from other games to Star Citizen is, I think that there's a small potential for Squadron 42 to be delivered to consoles.
I would disagree. I think that it's almost certain that they're going to deliver it to consoles.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a small chance.
Okay, fair enough.
I think that's a done deal with some of the hires I've been seeing on their LinkedIn. There's definitely some Xbox and folks that are on that team that just got hired in over the course of this year.
I did not know that.
Yep. So
But,
my gut says that it may not be a day one release Xbox, but I would say within 6 months of it releasing, it will be on Xbox, if not sooner.
Yeah.
Squadron 42. I don't see Star Citizen being on Xbox.
No, I think that it's going to be solely just Squadron 42. And I think that when people see that on console and experience it on console, they'll probably be more likely to think about, okay, well, maybe I want to get a gaming computer, and maybe I want to play this Star Citizen that's in the Squadron 42 universe. And
Yes.
I think that is where we'll really start to see the uptick of players join into Star Citizen from console.
I agree completely. I think that could definitely happen. So what do you think the sales figures are going to look like? Just a wild ass guess. How much of Squadron 42 is going to sell, do you think, in the first year?
In the first year?
Yeah.
So, well, if we want to rewind,
and PC only. Let's not worry about however long it takes for Xbox.
Sure. If we want to rewind and talk about the heyday of single player space simulators, let's talk Wing Commander 3, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. Back in the day, when they didn't have that many people gaming on computers, they still sold quite a bit for that day. And I think that it will probably see a good solid at least 2 million copies being sold. And that's just for the first few months, in my opinion. I think it's going to be exorbitantly more than that.
I think you're off by an order of magnitude. I mean, you look at Starfield, it sold more than 100 million copies in the first year.
That's fair.
And it, quite frankly, sucked when it got released. I mean, it was awful. And it wasn't tied into, and there's an MMO that you can play with. It was only single player. There was no multiplayer whatsoever tied to it. Well, I think you could see somewhere between 25 and 75 million copies being sold in the first year.
Yeah, that's fair. Guess. If we take Starfield as an example, if if what I was trying to say originally was if Chris Roberts and all of his employees deliver even to the realm of what Wing Commander 3 was back in the day, I think that we'll see those numbers for sure. But if it's, above and beyond that game and to the level of what Star Citizen has the potential to really be, I think if they deliver a great story and overall gameplay, it could see probably rival what Starfield had in a lot of ways.
So,
and what was it? Given it was $45 for Squadron 42 back in the day. I think they might obviously increase it, but
yeah, they're going to sell it, and I suspect that we're going to see some get Squadron 42 and Star Citizen together packages.
Yeah.
But as we look at that, I mean, whoops, sorry, 1 second. Sorry. I think as we look at that, I think what we're going to need to talk about is, what do we think the percentages of people that are buying Squadron 42 are also going to get into Star Citizen, the MMO? And my guess is that the low end of that is going to be 10%.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is 10%. And even
That's
10%,
the low end.
That's a lot of people.
So, I mean, you say 20, let's say I'm right. It's 25 million minimum, I think, on the sale of Squadron 42.
Yeah.
And 10% convert that's going to double the community size.
Yep.
And I
it's
think
going
it's
to double
going to
it for sure.
And I think that is a gross understatement.
And that we're also not thinking of funding as well. I did a video of, Star Citizen's going to reach $1 million before the end of 2025. And I think that if Squadron 42 releases, let's say at the beginning of next year, right? They're gonna, that 2.5 million people is gonna go from, we reached 1 billion to we reached 1.5 billion or more. A lot.
Between you, me, and the wall, if I was a betting man, I would bet that it goes on sale before Black Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, I may be wrong. My fear is if they miss that window, it's going to be another year before they release Squadron 42.
Yeah.
I don't see them, because I mean, if you look at the numbers from a business perspective, the sales are just drop off a cliff after Black Friday. Everybody has spent all their money. Gaming sales are awful in Q1 and Q2 of the next year. The soonest that you would see the game go on sale, if they have a decent marketing company, is late August, late September of next year. So my guess is that it either releases 2 weeks before Black Friday, or it's not going to release until next fall.
What do you think that they're going to do with, they had the original plan of coming out with the beta for everybody who backs or has already backed Squadron 42 and gotten a package for that? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to release it.
Okay.
Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe they give us 6 months or a year to play with it. Maybe that, to build up some hype. I think more likely, and again, all of this is pure speculation. I could be completely wrong. I would think more likely that they release it as a beta at CitizenCon.
That's what I think too.
And we have 3 weeks of beta testing, a month of beta testing, and then they put it on sale a week and a half, 2 weeks before Black Friday.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think that's a possibility. Again, if they miss it, if they don't release it, they're, within, the first week of November, they're probably not going to release it until next fall.
Yeah.
And we may see a beta over the summer or something. I never signed on to Star Citizen for Squadron 42. I'll play it, but I'm not nearly as excited about it as I am with the MMO. But with that said, we have this mass influx of 2 to 7 million new players to Star Citizen. What changes do you anticipate in player demographics when Squadron 42 releases in Star Citizen?
I think that we'll see a lot of the community's demographics switch from currently as it stands right now. I would say the whopping majority of them are older. They're between late 20s to what is it?
50.
Late 50s. Yeah. Like the demographics for the game right now, it's a lot of old people.
It's a
Older
lot of
people.
old males. Hey, look, I make this joke. I started Star Citizen in my 30s.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, in all likelihood, Star Citizen's not gonna release until I'm in my 50s.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, you're looking at people that played computer game. The vast majority are people that played Chris Robert games.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s.
Yep. Freelancer 2, Wing Commander 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, but I think the release of Squadron 42 is going to bring a much younger demographic. It's also going to bring a lot more casual players than we see today, in my opinion.
The younger generation and even the female demographic will increase tenfold, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the female demographic could change 100-fold. I'm not sure that we would notice it too much. There's so few of them, but
it's surprisingly high for Star Citizen as far as the amount of female players in Star Citizen.
Maybe. I mean, compared to some games, sure. Arma, I mean, females were completely unheard of. I mean, we've got females in staff on ADI.
Yep.
And I think we'll see more, but I mean, it's still 50 to 1, 100 to 1 kind of ratio on that. And I could see it being 2 out of 50 or 3 out of 50, but I don't see it being 15 out of 50.
Yeah. So we were talking about like the release timeframes, and I was just looking at some of the games previously had the most amount of sales. They are predominantly, of course, Q4, early mid Q4. But I was just wondering what you think of, because there's a lot of successful games that have released during Q1 in February of each year.
Not when you look at the sales numbers, and not for, and only for big name brand established titles, franchises. I mean, if you really look at that list, and correct me if I'm wrong, but everything on it's going to be sequel.
Elden Ring wasn't.
Okay.
Hogwarts Legacy was another one that was on there.
Hogwarts Legacy is a niche. I mean, it's a movie spinoff.
Yeah.
It's got a built-in, 100 million audience kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Most of them that I've seen so far have been predominantly in Q4.
And then my question would be, how many of those were released the year right after Christmas, where they released a new console? And is that some of what's going on? Because if you're console based, part of your thought process is let me sell. If I have a game that's got a lot of name recognition and a lot of built-in demographics, if I release it a month or two after Christmas, people just got new consoles and they'll buy it.
Yeah, that is a fair argument. Yeah.
So I would be curious to see, Starfield. It released in September, right before the end of September last year.
Yeah.
Sometime, in the last 2 weeks of September. I think you're going to find that September, October, November timeframe is going to be where all the big boys stack up and have the most success.
Yeah.
What you don't see is, I've not seen hardly any releases from Black Friday through the end of the year. I just don't see it happening. Could be wrong.
Yeah, not as much as around Black Friday and around like between August to November timeframe. Yeah.
Yep. So, how might organizations like ADI adapt to this influx of new players? What are organizations going to need to be ready to do?
Sorry.
Okay.
I think they would just largely need to be kind of focusing on bringing people to the org and pretty much mass recruiting. If you're looking to take advantage of that influx of players, you just have to kind of go go crazy and just put in the work to get more people into the org. So I think that's one of the biggest things that ADI can do is when that influx, before that influx even begins to happen, when we just start to see, okay, they're getting ready to release something pretty major and it's going to drastically affect us, have the capacity to think about the big picture by going, okay, if they're releasing this, we can expect that this could be one of the biggest moments that we could recruit people. And I think taking advantage of that and getting a whole bunch of people in on recruiting as many people as possible, that you could see a whole lot of influx in your org as it is.
It is. I think it's a twofold issue. I think you've got to be ready to be able to take and bring those new players in, but you've also got to have people that are set aside to help teach them how to play the game.
Oh, yeah.
Because because let's be honest, Star Citizen is not, it's like drinking from a fire hose trying to learn how to play it. And
there's a steep learning curve for sure.
A massively steep. I mean, it's not BMS or anything like that, but it's a big, hairy monster to learn.
Yeah.
And you're going to have, we've seen running training events and things like that, and having nights where we're doing different things so people can experience different gameplay has been a huge benefit to both recruiting and keeping and retention and keeping activity up. And so I think you're right, that's the big thing orgs are going to have to do, is be prepared not only to recruit and bring those people in, but also integrate them in and keep them entertained until they learn how to play the game.
Yeah. Having guides, having our own self certifications where they can just look at a spreadsheet or look at a document and say,
or
okay,
a video.
Yeah, we're a video.
Yeah. So while we talk about that, how might the influx of new players influence the game's dynamics? You take the equivalent of 1 to 3 times the number of people that are in the game currently over the course of the last decade and dump them in all at once into the PU. What is that massive influx of new players that don't know how to play what do you see as the issues there?
I foresee a lot of herding cats and trying to organize people to go to specific locations or to get them all together so that you can perform all the necessary steps that you need in order to get established. Especially, if we think just small terms right now with the way the game will be in 4.0, I think that's a lot of just going out and exploring all the different things that they'll have in 4.0, for example. They allude to a lot of different, I wouldn't say different commodities, but a different a different focus on certain commodities in Pyro because it's less civilized. So a lot of your more basic commodities are going to be more valuable than something like titanium or tungsten, for example, because you're trying to get the basics built up first. So you're going to go out and do things like quantanium primarily, hydrogen, all sorts of different types of basic metals.
I think there's going to be a black market in buying water bottles, shoving them into
Yeah.
1 or 2 SCU containers with food, flying them over there and selling them to players,
Yeah.
and then turning around and using the profit to buy high-end weapons that you can buy there at the black market stores and drugs, and sneaking them back into Stanton and selling them at Stanton.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point too, as well. Because in Pyro, they don't have the basics of clean water. So
Yep.
you could literally make your name by going to Stanton, getting a whole shit ton of water bottles that aren't more than,
irradiated.
Yeah, and taking them to Pyro and be like, hey, here's some premium Alpine Glacier water, bro. Check this out. And sell them for like 3, 4, 5 times what they go for in Stanton. And people are just like, well, it doesn't give me negative stats. And I don't accumulate radiation from drinking this. So I think I'll just do it.
The guy with 100 SCU of cruise is going to be king.
Yeah. We're gonna start a new series and call it Cruise Runners, the smuggling story of cruise runners.
So, what kind of strategies? I mean, you run our fleet security division, which is kind of our self-protection combat unit in ADI. What strategies are you planning to use to integrate all of these new players into our combat ops when they show up on our doorstep?
Yep.
Sometime, I think we both agree, in the next 18 months at the latest.
Yeah. Essentially, right now, we're just trying to build up our staff even more so in FleetSec so we can get to the point where we can teach other people in various different staff spots that they can teach things like MBT or CPT, so that when this influx happens, it won't just come down to, hey, FleetSec, we need you to throw something together and teach all these people. And there's a laundry list of people on that spreadsheet. There will be other divisions that will be able to support that and teach it to the same level of care and precision that we do so in FleetSec, and adhere to the standards that we developed in the first place. So a lot of people have talked about how MBTs are super beneficial, and they teach, people that may have even played first person shooters primarily. They teach them a lot of new tactics and teach it in a way that makes sense.
You got to remember, a lot of the people watching this podcast don't know all of our acronyms like you and I do. So what is MBT and CPT?
So MBT primarily being Marine basic training, teaching them how to clear rooms and how to board ships, how to operate in 0G environments, or environments that have no breathable oxygen, for example. And then CPT is combat flight training or combat pilot training, and that is where it won't teach the basics of flying, but it will teach them essential combat tactics flying with a group of people, and that's like a wing of 4 or several wings of 4. But
yes, ADI style.
Depending upon how big the strike package is, which we're slowly working on, but basically just teaching them how to fight and communicate and move as a team, regardless of if it's space-borne operations in a ship or on the surface of a planet or in a space station, for example.
So when we're seeing this massive growth, what is your advice to folks running organizations on how they maintain their culture and values while they're hopefully growing rapidly? I mean, we've seen that before. That was a real challenge for us.
Yeah.
Where you're adding 2,000 people in a year. What would be your advice to other org leaders out there, or people to look for, so that they know that they're getting into a stable environment?
I would say that if you've established your values and your vision, to just stay true to that and continue trying to learn how to progress more. Don't be stagnant, and don't be afraid of change, but also, have the perspective to not capitulate to essentially what could be bad ideas later down the road. Like what may work right here and right now for Star Citizen 3.24 will absolutely not work when 4.0 hits, when 1.0 hits. So
I think there's an argument that the basics always work. Teamwork, yes. How to cover each other, that kind of stuff is always going to work. How to back your flight lead, that kind of stuff. But you're right. The actual individual tactics or weapons and tools all are subject to massive changes.
Yeah. For all we know, that, when we get access to the PAR, that may be the go-to rifle, or it may not be. And
it may be the go-to rifle for 6 months, and then it may change.
Yeah. Star Citizen is always changing. The weapons and all the, the meta weapons or the meta attachments, they change over time and pretty quickly and pretty rapidly. So
yeah, I still like suppressed rifles and ballistic rifles. I don't care what, if they're submachine guns or rifles or LMGs, and throw a laser and a silencer on it and give me a 2 or 3x red dot, and I'm off to the races.
That brings up an interesting thought process. I wish that suppressors actually did something for lasers as well, as far as reducing the signature of the laser projectiles. But
no such luck.
No such luck.
I don't expect that we'll see that. I think that'll be the downside to the laser stuff. Is it's great. It works real well, except it draws a line right to where to shoot.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so, I think that's going to be the real problem.
Yep. Instead of it being tracers every 5 rounds, it's every single round.
Yep. And some weapons are not shooting tracers at all.
No. Yep.
I run I don't do a lot of ground combat anymore, but I run a P8, a little SMG, and there's no tracers. Nobody sees me. I mean, I just, the silencer is able to keep it quiet, and I can run up on people and shoot them in the head, and they don't know that I was there till they're dead. So moving on back to Squadron 42, what are your expectations for the single player experience in Squadron 42? How excited are you about that? And what are the things that you are most excited about or think are going to be great?
I think that largely because the game has taken this long, but also Chris Roberts has been this is his magnum opus. So he is going to be pretty scrupulous on making sure that the story overall is one that's pretty epic, that will really make people gravitate towards wanting to be a part of that universe. And I think that my expectations for Squadron 42 is it can be, even if it was a mid-tier game, and we're like, okay, pretty solid story, decent. Gameplay alone and story alone just being kind of average, I think it's still going to be pretty popular. I think it's definitely going to make me happy, and it's definitely I'm probably going to play it several times over, but I think that it's going to be another level above that. I think it's going to be a really genuine, well-told story with obviously actors that have already been a part of Chris Roberts' projects, Wing Commander 3 being one of them. John Rhys-Davies and Mark Hamill were quintessential in that story, and I think I think that they are going to tell a pretty epic story that we haven't seen in some time. And my favorite game of all time was Mass Effect, and all of the entire trilogy. I thought it was one of the most epic stories ever told, and I think it's going to be just a bit better than that. So I'm going to be pretty excited for it. I think that it will really truly bring a lot of people to the game, and maybe even the more critical of people that have said Star Citizen will never happen. I think that they'll actually witness it through the single player and maybe start to realize that, okay, this has absolutely has the potential.
Okay. And as a follow-up, how might the story and gameplay of Squadron 42 influence, in your mind, player interest in Star Citizen? Do you think that they're purposely going to put tie-ins in there to try, and do you think it'll be successful?
Yeah, I absolutely think they're going to put a lot of different tie-ins, and obviously we'll have the opportunity to go to Odin, which is largely where Squadron 42 is set in. And I think that Odin is probably going to follow suit into being added to Star Citizen within, I might be crazy, but within a year of Squadron 42 being released. Just because I know that they're done with Nyx. There isn't much work left to do with Odin outside of adding landing locations that they may have already had, for all I know, and missions and whatnot.
I think we're going to be at 5-star systems in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
I think
agree.
there's 2 or 3 done, and they're not showing it to us because they're in Squadron 42.
Because why would you?
Well, you wouldn't. You want to hold that back,
yep.
And then, Squadron 42 released, next major patch. Oh, look, all those star systems are unlocked.
Wow, impressive.
So it wouldn't surprise me if it was, within 3 months of the Squadron 42 being released that we had 5-star systems. I think the bigger issue is going to be dynamic meshing. Can they get that done in time or not?
Yeah, and that's what all those systems rely on as well, is static server meshing. They needed that in order to be able to add all these systems.
I think that they need dynamic they're going to need dynamic for 4 or 5 or 6-star systems.
Yeah,
I don't think maybe we'll see. Okay.
But yeah, I think that they'll have a lot of different tie-ins, and that will be one of the most epic moments for everybody who has been watching or even involved in the game since however long they've been involved, whether it's 11 years, 12 years for us, or a couple years for other people. For 6 months. Yeah. When we travel into that and experience the single player game, I think it's going to be just one of those moments that just pops in our head, and we're just, wow, this is incredible. And realizing that if they could deliver that in a single player game, and if they can move that over into a massively multiplayer online game with dynamic server meshing, it's going to be just on another level. We're already seeing it with static server meshing, and if they can get dynamic server meshing, it'll be just a whole another beast.
I agree. Dynamic server meshing's coming. The technology's there. They'll get that worked out. It'll be bumpy when they do, but they're going to get it worked out. I think they're farther along on dynamic than we think.
Yeah, I have to agree.
So, any final thoughts on Squadron 42 and its impact that we haven't discussed?
No, I don't think so. I think it's really going to make the game blow up in a lot of different ways. And that's primarily just with the amount of people playing it. It's undoubtedly going to go into being released on console, and that will be one of the biggest indications of, okay, this game is going to happen, and there's going to be a lot more people in the verse.
A lot more. It's going to blow up, I think. Okay, well, give us a shout out. We haven't talked about it, but you're a content creator. You have a YouTube channel. Tell people where they can find your insights on a weekly basis.
Yep, they can find me on YouTube at Havoc, and I'm also on Twitter, ACP Havoc, and eventually I'll be on Twitch at some point under Havoc7. So,
And I'm sure that we'll get those thrown up in the on the screen.
yeah.
So thank you very much, and loved having you, Havoc. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Have a good one.
Want to know more about the upcoming changes in Star Citizen's cargo systems? Click the link on the screen to watch JC and Space Coder discuss how these updates will transform cargo trading strategies in Star Citizen 3.24.